All right, welcome to our third study strategy, which is to use practice tests, represented here by the fishing pole, going to retrieve some memories from the brain as a way of improving our learning or understanding of that information. So let's get into it. Restudying, rereading, rewriting our notes typically doesn't help our learning very much. Evidence shows it's usually a very inefficient and effective study strategy. But taking practice tests improves our learning quite a bit, or practice retrieving information from our memories is actually really useful. It makes retrieving that information easier in the future. So in order to be able to retrieve that information, we need to practice retrieving that information. Here's examples of research evidence showing the benefits of practice tests and practice recall. This first one's in an undergraduate stats course, where one group of learners practiced recall, where at the end of each lecture, they just wrote down everything they could remember from that lecture, and the other group just left. They went along with their normal everyday schedule. The final test was this complex stats test. What we find is even on this exam performance, those that practice recall got 86% correct, while those that didn't practice recall only got 78% correct. In other words, practicing recall boosted exam performance by a full letter grade here. Another example comes from fifth graders who are learning complex definitions like what is a convex lens. So everyone studied these definitions. Then they either restudied and reread them, or they took a practice test on them, either with feedback of the correct answer or not. And then everyone took a final test 4 weeks later. So how did we do? Those that took a practice test, the blue bars, did significantly better on that final test than those that restudied. We're talking 7-8 percentage points, regardless of whether feedback is provided or not. Further, it doesn't matter if it's science or geography, those that take practice tests remember much more than those that just restudy or reread. Again, once again, showing the benefits or the importance of practice retrieving the information from memory. All right, so how do these practice tests actually help with learning? We had a recent study here that looks at how restudying versus retrieval practice or practice tests differentially impact what's going on in our brain. And basically, retrieval practice is producing much stronger activation across a wide variety of areas throughout the brain, from the anterior insula to the angular gyrus to the left precentral. All of these areas are showing greater activation during retrieval practice or practice tests than they are during study. Again, indicating that we are getting stronger brain activation in those critical brain regions. These are indicating that it's strengthening our neuronal representation of those retrieved ideas and creating stronger retrieval routes to access that information. And it's showing that it's connecting that retrieval practice, the practice tests are connecting that knowledge to other knowledge more than restudying does. Another example of some brain research showing why this is useful. Again, testing leads to much better memory for these items. And we've got the brain areas that are more active during testing compared to restudying, shown in those highlighted bright yellow areas. Again, lots of different regions across the brain are more active during testing than restudy, which is showing, again, retrieval practice, more activity in the left IPL, the MTG, the IFG, the ventral striatum, the midbrain, Again, lots of different areas of the brain become more active during that as practice, tests, and restudy. How we interpret that or what that means is just that practice tests enrich or create meaningful connections. Practice tests inhibit wrong or irrelevant responses. And practice tests activate our motivation and reward circuits that strengthen our retention of that information. All right, so how can we use retrieval practice to improve our grades in Chem 151? Lots of different ways. Anything that involves practice retrieving it from memory rather than rereading it or restudying it is going to be useful. So things like creating our own questions and then trying to answer them from memory. A brain dump where we write down anything we can remember from a reading or a lecture, just trying to retrieve as much information and practice retrieving that as we can. Flashcards are useful for retrieval practice as long as we are actively trying to recall the answer before just looking at it. But lots of other ways. As long as we are retrieving that information from memory, we can create a graphic organizer from memory. We can draw a process from memory. We can describe it to a third grader from memory. But anything that is using our memory to answer those questions is going to support our learning, support our exam performance in the future.